Greetings, everybody. Patrick here, Eight Questions With, and I am here with our special guest tonight, the doctor of
Yeah, it's
the doc.
me.
It is Dr. Ivan Cryptosis.
Yes, Ivan Cryptosis, center square of pop culture, curator of the macabre. That would be me. Oh, and the Billy Mays of horror hosts. Some people remember him.
Yeah, I think he would actually be a really good horror host right now, wouldn't he? I mean, because
Oh, he would
isn't that part of the requirements that you have to be undead to be a horror host?
at least, at least, undead is the bare minimum.
Hey, Jaden, how are you? How are you? Uh, so we are here with Wisconsin's finest horror host, Doc Ivan, Dr. Ivan. Hey, Anthony, how are you, sir? How are you? You have to send me your address, Anthony, before I can send you that movie. So send me your address, and I'll send you a movie. I gotten an extra copy of a movie, and I said, "Who wants it?" And Anthony raised his hand up, so I want to send it to him.
Oh, I could
Um,
see that. I was wondering whose hand that was.
Yes, it was Anthony. He's going like, "I'll take it, I'll take it." Um, yeah, he is a cinephile beyond reckoning. He will watch anything and everything. Um, yeah, so we're talking the horror host in Wisconsin. That's going to be a lot of fun. Wisconsin's like right in the middle. It's just right in the middle of America, and would you consider Wisconsin a good state for horror? I mean, do you feel like there are a lot of horror fans in Wisconsin, or could
Oh,
there be more?
it is absolutely the best for horror. You're forgetting, my friend. This is the home of Ed Gein. This is the home of Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, what more could you ask when you're talking about horror, like true crime horror?
Oh, yes, that's right, Jeffrey Dahmer. He would take you out for a movie and dinner, but you would
Oh,
be the
he would.
dinner.
Yes, yes.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think about it in Ed Gein. I mean, um, there's a lot of movies made on those two infamous serial killers. Uh, is that do you think do you think talking about true life crime like that? Um, do you think talking about true? I mean, when you see it happening and people talk about it and bring it up over and over and over, um, do you think that like you always hear about some certain horror movies desensitizing us as a society? But do you think true crime does the same thing? I mean, and is it important to when you talk about horror movies? Is it really important? Do you feel to make sure that there's some humor injected into it, so it's not all doom and gloom?
Well, I think that is true. There should be, that there's enough doom and gloom in the movies themselves. I think it's incumbent upon the host to kind of take that edge off of it a little bit. And that's what I would routinely try and do. I mean, if you look at it from a realistic standpoint, there are plenty of followers of true crime, as many as there are of followers for the horror things like I get involved with here.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I didn't really realize till this year. I would think that horror movies are like one of the ultimate escapisms in America. You know, like you're having a bad day, you slip on a horror movie and watch somebody else have a worse day. You know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and you think that would be the case. You know, like that's what I don't want to sit here and be bagged down with life and jobs and everything else. But for some reason, we are fascinated with true crime.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't. Yeah. Do you do you think that's because there are less outlets out there for to make horror film a little bit more, like we and I were talked off camera about the lack of independent TV shows or channels where horror hosts would every Saturday you could turn on any one of a station and there'd be someone out there showing a Godzilla movie or talking about the hand that crawls. But as we've gotten away from that because of all our TV stations becoming, corporations. Um, do you think that by the recess of comedy and horror, do you think that's opened the door for more true crime and more, you know, I dare not say cynicism about it, but
I think what has opened the door is the fact that there is so much content that is now required for, be it regular television or streaming services or what have you. There is such a huge demand that it garners the door open for the true crime, for the horror film, science fiction, what have you. Those doors are now quite open because of that.
Our good friend Mike is here from Did You See That? Is here. He's saying hello to us both. And yes, we're doing both we're doing okay.
Oh,
Definitely doing okay. Mike also hosts a channel here on the Tube. And he is a very supportive a friend from the UK and a lot of fun to talk to. And yeah, thank you for coming in. And he's 5 hours ahead of us.
oh
He
man,
comes,
he should be sleeping. What are you wasting your time on?
I totally agree with you, but I'm so grateful he pops in here. He pops in here every time at 8 o'clock and he says hello. And I know it's 1 o'clock over where he's at. And so I'm really thankful that he comes over and says hello. I think it's really cool.
Well, I
Uh,
won't tell his mother on him that he's staying.
uh, so yeah, I know it's a little heavy question right off the bat, but I was just thinking about this when you and I were talking about this, off camera, and I'm thinking, you know, when I grew up watching the horror host, and the same was probably with you. I mean, they were so fun and lighthearted and always made you laugh, and you're always looking forward to it. It's like, yes, it's Saturday night. Who's on? Who cares? As long as we can see what the host is up to. What's he going to be cooking today in the Super Bowl. Who knows what he's going to bring to the party, or she who knows
Well,
what she's going to bring to the
see,
party.
that was always the case. Never really cared what that movie was. They could have shown anything on Nightmare Theater. It wouldn't have made one difference to me because I was there to see Dr. Cadaverino. He was the one. He was my influence, and without him, probably a lot of the horror films would have simply passed by me.
Mm,
So,
yeah,
and
me too.
it's true for, markets across the United States that, be it Cincinnati or Cleveland or Minneapolis or Green Bay. Oh, man. All those guys had horror hosts back in the day.
Yeah. Those
And
are those are sorely missed.
yes, absolutely. We want to see
Um,
more and more out there.
we need more. We need more. Mike already has a question for you, Doctor. He says, "What is Doctor Cryptosis' favorite horror movie?"
Oh, that one is easy. And it's been that way forever. It's the old dark house. It's based on the Priestley novel. It starred Boris Karloff. It starred Melvin Douglas, Charles Lawton, all the big hooby hoos of the day were in there. Even that oh, I always forget her name. She was in that Titanic movie. She played the old lady in the movie Titanic.
Gloria Swanson,
No, no, no. That's a
Gloria
TV.
Stewart, Gloria Stewart.
Could be. It could be. That's the thing with movies. I talk about them all the time. Details, man, they pass me by a lot of times. But yes, Gloria Stewart, she was in there. She was the one that she was the love interest in the old dark house.
Wow.
It had the strange doctor from Bride of Frankenstein. Dr. Pretorius was in there. And that movie gets creepier and creepier as you watch it. So yes, Old Dark House, my favorite film of all horror film of all time.
Uh, wow. I'm probably gonna end up losing my horror card for this, probably for a month. But then again, I'm used to getting my horror card canceled all the time. I do. A lot of times people will say, because I'll put down something I'm watching, and it might not be what everybody thinks is horror, and then I get my horror card revoked. Um, but I have to admit, I have not heard of that movie, but I will find it. I will
There are
find it.
old remakes, none of which are as good as the original. But yes, you check out Old Dark House.
Oh, definitely. The lineup sounds absolutely spectacular. I mean, anything with Bela Lugosi and Charles Lawton in it.
Oh no, no,
My
Boris Karloff.
Boris
Uh,
was Lugosi in it too?
no, no, no. Bella
No,
was
just Boris
not.
Karloff. That's
Boris
good enough.
Karloff was in it.
Um,
He
do,
he
do you do
played
you
the
think
monster
do you
interest.
think those two are really are? Do you think Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, those two more or less, are really truly the first two pioneers of what we know as horror movies? I mean, there are others out there like Lon Chaney and what have you, but whenever time I think of truly the start of horror, the start of
Oh,
what became horror, uh, I immediately think of Karloff and Lugosi. Is that a fair assessment to say?
I think it is because that's the start of the sound films. And I think it's always fair and right to add in Lon Chaney Jr. There's nothing like a Wolfman. And I would even go so far as to add Claude Rains as the Invisible Man into that. So really four.
Our good friend Dell is here, and thank you for coming in, Dell. He also is another YouTube film horror channel who's coming in and saying hello. Yeah, this is a lot of fun already. We just barely got going, boys and girls. So you guys came in just in time for the show. That's for sure.
I know
We
my
are talking to
blood's not even curdling yet.
with Wisconsin's best horror host right here, right now, Dr. Ivan Cryptosis. Um, you and what's funny is like I met you through Facebook. Um, you and I are part of a group, horror group together, and that's run by Count Gregula, and that's how you and I met. And he also is a horror host, and
He's a
up until
horror host, all right. My buddy Gregula.
he's a really nice guy, and he runs a really good group, and there's a lot of love in that group. I really appreciate going over there and hanging out, and seeing what other people post up in the group. um how did you find that group? How did you meet Count Gregula? And are there enough horror hosts out there, doctor,
Well,
that
Gregula
you
and we were in prison together years ago. He was one of my favorite cellmates. No, actually, Gregula. Oh man, he and Mrs. Gregula, we go way back to horror hound conventions years and years ago. And I must apologize to the Linda Gregula for making her drink the hand sanitizer by mistake. That's the last time we were down there.
mm. Dell comes up with a question. He comes up with a statement that could be true. It says, "What about Nosferatu? I always think of that one as the start of making horror cinema what it is today. But I think that was a silent film, was it not?
It was silent. It
Yeah.
was, in fact, I showed that film and I showed Thomas Edison's Silent Frankenstein movie on my program years ago. So, from a very pure standpoint, it could be said both those films would have been the start of horror. But
Oh,
from a talkie standpoint, it's Frankenstein and Dracula in the 30s.
I would say like King Kong, a 33 would be the start of creature features.
Yeah.
Um, it's not too much of a stretch to put Fay Ray as the first final girl. Because
No, that would
no,
not be a stretch.
no, would not be a stretch to put her as a final girl. There's a lot of really great history in the 30s and the 40s and 20s.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There are, you know, people are people sometimes tend to shy away from black and white movies. They shy away from the silent films. But when I showed that Edison's Frankenstein at a museum in Madison for a program one year, and there were so many horror fans that were anxious to see that because they hadn't seen it in years. There were there were so few. In fact, there was only one copy of that film that was known to exist, and it is still the case.
Ah. Now, I wonder if they could duplicate it.
Oh, they have
Huh.
it. It's out on. It was put out onto DVDs. Little silvery discs and that. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's out on those.
Okay.
I don't know if it's readily available for sale. It had very limited distribution. In
Mm,
fact, it was digitally pieced back together by that outfit out in California. Some Was it UCLA's film school or something? I think it was.
mhm,
They put it back together. They the the existing print was on regular movie theater stock, and it was deteriorating over time. That celluloid, it goes away. But they
yeah.
saved it, and there was a fellow in Milwaukee that had the only remaining copy of that. Kind of an eccentric fellow. I just can't think of his name offhand, but we were going to get him out there to introduce his Frankenstein movie, but never were able to tie him up, so to speak.
Ah, that would have been cool. That would have been a lot of fun. So how did the good doctor get his start on his way to become Wisconsin's most well-known horror host? Um, how old were you when you how old were you when you first saw what was the first horror film that you saw that you can remember?
That I can remember was watching Dr. Cadaverino, probably when I was, 10 or so, and showing the Universal films, Dracula. He would show some of the Hammer films. And that was kind of when my start came. The character really didn't develop as you see me now until later in life. It started out as a Halloween costume. And I thought back to those days in the late 60s, early 70s of watching Cadaverino, and here he showed up. What can I say? So that's kind of the start. Halloween costume.
Okay.
And when I was working at the museum there, we were doing Halloween themed events, and we were showing all the old films that the week before Halloween, and we wanted to promote the showing of these films. So they said, well, why don't you go down? There was this TV station in Madison, and they no longer exist. It was WYOU in Madison, and there was a program called Saturday Night Frights. And on Saturday Night Frights, they had a host. My buddy Shane Bradley was hosting a horror show at that time. And they asked me, or Shane asked me, he says, would you like to come back after the first time? Well, after coming back, and about 3 to 4 years passed, and I was still doing the show. So apparently they liked what Shane and I were doing together, and we showed like the old, what's his name, the Italian director when they were Flauci, something like that. Again, more details I can't be bothered with. So they were showing those films along with all those wonderful public domain films.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of what got the start as far as TV goes. It was Saturday Night Frights, which was a fantastic show to do. It was done live. It was done live the old-fashioned way, where we would be seated in the studio and doing the movie thing from start to finish. We do the intro, we do a few bits in between, and we do the outro at the very end. So yeah, people don't do programs like that anymore. It's all cut up in little segments, and you go in and record your bit, and then they piece it all together. But the live stuff was great.
Now, yes, the live was a lot of fun. I saw a few movies like that with a live horror host before they got recorded, but I always thought that was the best way to go too, because you never knew what was going to happen. You just never knew, and that made it really exciting. Um, yeah,
Yes.
and you're right. I mean, you mentioned about the TV. The TV station is no longer there. We were talking about that too. It's like it's like there's not a lack of horror hosts. There's a lot out there. It's
Oh,
just
there are.
there's just not very many TV stations out there that are independently owned that will be willing to do that. They're willing to put on a horror host. I
Well,
I always thought myself. I always thought the one channel I thought would have really benefited from a horror host and done really well with it. I actually thought it would have been the Sci-Fi Channel. I
oh,
thought for sure. I thought
absolutely.
for sure.
I think it was what's his name, Joe Bob Billy Bob Briggs.
Yeah,
He did a show for a while, and he still does some. He does shows on streaming services now,
right.
and
The Last
uh,
Drive-In, I think it's
there was
called.
a little bit with that back in the '80s and into the early '90s.
Yeah, he does a show called The Last Drive-In.
Yeah.
He does that on Shutter with Diana Prince.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Yes.
but I see. I've always saw Billy Joe. Billy Joe as more as a movie critic than I saw him as a host. I mean, he got his start being a critic. I mean, that was his calling card. He was
See,
a
they moved him over. They found an advantage to moving him over to that, and that's the way it kind of worked out for him.
Now, when you were growing up, did you go to a lot of the drive-in theaters? Did you go with your family or your bunch of friends? Did you guys all pile in the car and hit the drive-in theaters?
Well, you're assuming I've grown up. That's the first premise that we need to clear up. Because if you're out horror hosting, no matter what age, grown up, oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, I would get a lot of heat with that. But going to drive-in theaters, that is one of my first loves. I belong to a number of the groups that are out on the facing book thing with relatives to drive-in theaters and so forth, and they just so many of them are just disappearing. We do see new people get into them. I do currently appear at the Highway 18 Outdoor Theater in Jefferson, Wisconsin every season. I typically try to get out there every Friday and Saturday nights. I'm the
Oh,
host I'm the host and the voice of the Highway 18 and introducing the movies. In fact, I had a very, I don't know if it's, I guess it's an honorable distinction simply because not just as a horror host, I view myself as a pitch man. And they asked me to introduce the Barbie movie this year. Well, you wouldn't believe all the heat that I took from my fellow hosts for introducing the Barbie. But it, it's like I say, I am a pitch man. And if
yeah.
you have something that needs to be promoted, Cryptosis, right here. I'm the one to promote it.
Why the hell? Why would hell? I mean, why not? Why not? Go out there and introduce a movie like Barbie. I think that is. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic.
During that Barbie movie, because it ran so many weekends there, um, we actually there's a company called Phoenix Comics out of Texas, and oh man, they make little miniature figurines of different horror hosts and all kinds of different people. Well, for the Barbie movie, my character typically looks how you see it here, and I have a miniature figurine of Cryptosis that that people can buy and so forth. But what they did for the Barbie movie, we did two limited figures, one of which was Cryptosis with a fuchsia derby and bleach blonde hair and pink suit coat on, and it was the Malibu Cryptosis figure is what it was called, and then they made an Oscar version of me in all shiny gold. Well, during the course of the Barbie movie showing, we sold those, and we sold those and gave everything to breast cancer awareness.
Oh, that's
So
great.
we thought,
I
well, we'll
do
do
hope.
something
I
good.
do hope that you kept. I do hope that you kept a couple for yourself.
There might be one kicking around, but I couldn't even promise it. But
Yeah.
they were all they individually limited, numbered them, and all that kind of stuff.
And they gave all the money to breast cancer. Thank you for doing that.
No
That's an
problem.
amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And like I said, I think it's great that you went out there and you did that for the Barbie movie. I think that I think if anybody was jumping on you, I would dare say that they were slightly green because the way you look at it is you get out there, you introduce a popular movie to an audience that may not have seen a horror host. Maybe they've never seen a horror host. Maybe this is your first exposure. This is their first exposure to you. And then again, you're at now you're seeing two classic parts of American cinema. You're seeing the drive-in theater, actually three, because you're seeing the drive-in theater, you're seeing Barbie, which is an iconic toy,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
they get to see a horror host. I mean, what a great opportunity for young cinephiles to be exposed to that. I think it's amazing. I think it's great.
And after the last few years, during COVID, the outdoor theater could be open simply because you weren't in an enclosed space. There were rules that you had to park your car a little differently, and but other than that, you could still go to the drive-in, and they weren't releasing first run films. So things like Jaws, things like Star Wars, Psycho. Oh man, seeing Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho on that huge outdoor screen, all digitally refixed in that. Oh man, what an awesome film to see. But Yeah, they showed all these, everything from the backing into the future movies and all those, drew great crowds, and a significant portion of those films, they drew people who have never been to a drive-in before.
Now, how old were you when you first went inside your drive-in theater?
Oh, I was probably in my, I was in my sixes, seven-ishes, maybe a little younger, going in the back of mom and dad's VW Beetle. What a
Oh,
3.5 that was. And, we'd go see, and I can't think of the name of the movie. I want to say None But the Brave was the first film that I recall seeing at a drive-in at the old Starlight Theater in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it's since been, torn down for something silly.
yeah. Dell had mentioned we were talking about the Edison's Frankenstein movie, and he said that it is on YouTube. He says that Frankenstein's Edison was in okay shape for a 100-year-old movie on YouTube. He said he just did a search for that Frankenstein. It looks like there's some restorated versions out there now, so it might look pretty good. So it's still
Yeah.
out there. Yeah. Um, yeah, during the pandemic, um, it seemed to be for a little bit like there was, drive-in theaters were going to become or trying to make a comeback.
Yes.
In fact, I still think there are some new drive-in theaters that are actually being built. Not a lot of them, but there are some that are being built. And then there are some that are, now that the pandemic's over, now they're going, a lot of more stayed afloat during the pandemic. Now that's over with. Now everybody's going back
See,
inside.
the problem is not the drive-in as much as it is the viewing habits and the movies that are out there. People really, they like that idea of seeing, those old blockbuster films, be it from the 80s, be it from the 70s, that they could now see it at the drive-in. It's a great place, for the kids. I can't even begin to tell you how many pickup trucks with sofas in the back bed of those pickup trucks
Yeah,
coming in to see the movies.
yeah.
You
And
know,
and and I dare say this, doctor, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think drive-in theaters had the best theater food. Man,
oh,
there I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's the open air or what have you, but when I think of the best food I've ever had at a theater, it's
it's
always
the
been at a
floor, it's the
drive-in.
floor scrapings. That's what it is. It's the floor scrapings they mix in.
Because
No,
I love their food. I mean, it was a treat knowing that you could get fresh popcorn or hot dogs or a milkshake or whatever. It just tasted so much fresher, and it just seems to taste so much better than regular theater food. You go in there and there's a hot dog sitting on there that's older than the movie you're watching. Uh, you know, and the price to buy it. I mean, you could go to college on that. But the drive-in theater, and then you could always get your friends in. Like part of the fun was actually, not only not only could you sneak your own snacks in, but sometimes they would sit there and say, well, we're charging you per person in the car, and you'd be going out there with you and your buddy, and telling your other friends in the
yeah,
trunk to stay
yeah,
quiet. And then you have like four buddies in the car in the trunk, and I was in the trunk once. And you sat there and you try not to laugh because you don't want them to find out.
right.
Like and that was fun. It was just the drive-in theater was just my first movie that I can remember seeing was at a drive-in.
Yeah.
I saw The Blue Max with George Papard. That's the
Oh,
first
sure,
movie
sure.
I remember. Uh, uh, um,
Yeah, but the drive-in, let me say this about the drive-ins. When you go up there and you're getting your ticket, that theater owner gets such a small fraction of that ticket Plus, they get audited to make sure that they are indeed selling the tickets. So everything that they're making, or most everything that they're making off the snack bars. And just thinking about it now, I can actually smell in my head. I can smell the theater popcorn. That is my favorite. I would always walk out of there with a bucket of popcorn, and I would tell them, just as much butter as you got in that container, you pour that onto my popcorn.
That's right. Make that popcorn swim. Yeah, I mean, you know what? That's actually telling the truth. Is like we actually did not. I mean, a couple of times we did, but as far as bringing our own food in, which you could do back then, we normally did not do that, even though it cost us more money. But we liked the food better at the theater, so we wouldn't really sneak in our snacks too much at the drive-in. Now the regular theater, all the
Yes.
time, all the time. Even if I went tomorrow to see a movie, I'm sneaking in food. I'm taking food in with me.
Yeah.
But if I went to a drive-in, if you and I were going to go grab these guys in the chat, and we're all going to go down there to the drive-in, I wouldn't bring any food. I would buy it there.
Drive-in
Yeah,
goers
it's
are
part of the
very,
experience.
they're very loyal. They are
Yeah.
absolutely loyal. I see people all summer long that I've seen weeks before and at the start of the season, at the end of the season, that they will wait to go see the movie at the drive-in rather than go to an indoor theater. And they always make it a point to stop by and see me, to see what Cryptosis has been up to.
Oh,
And yeah, it's almost like it's almost a family type affair.
God, that's cool.
They've got the Highway 18. They still have the old Iron Monkey bars and the what do they call that thing that tilts up and down? Oh man,
Oh,
you know,
teeter totter.
teeter totter. Yes, it's all the old iron stuff where you can actually fall off of it and hurt yourself.
Right.
None of this, oh man, we're gonna fall into a bunch of cut up old little pieces of rubber, and then no, no, no.
No.
You fall down. That's the way it works. And they're
Now,
playing frisbees and tossing footballs
yeah,
and playing catch with baseballs. So it is a very fun event.
yes.
The sad part,
People get there early as hell too, right?
oh,
I mean, they get there, we'll start the movie at twilight, but man, people would get there like an hour before, but just
oh,
because of that, just to go out there and play around and shit.
during summer, the gates open at like 6:30. And oftentimes that movie wouldn't start till 9 or even after 9, depending on when that sun thing drops out of the sky.
Right,
And so they're
right.
spending a good long time there, and they're waiting, again, depending on what the feature is, they're waiting a good long time to get into that movie.
Now,
And
the drive-ins now, do they still show double features?
they still show double features. The exception they made this summer was for the Barbie movie, because there are a couple of them. These movies that are 3 hours long. We don't have the mental ability to sit through a 3 hour long film and then watch another film. So
No.
sometimes they will only show a single feature, but I would say 90% of the time it is a double feature that they are showing.
Mm.
And the second movie, oftentimes it's the movie from the week before. So I see people coming out there just to be out there. They have seen that movie earlier. They've seen it the week before, or they've seen it at an outdoor theater, but they want that experience of being out there under the stars again. The tagline is the Highway 18, where you will see the stars under the stars.
Oh,
And seeing the stars is not always the case, other than the ones in the sky.
how many seasons have you worked at the drive-in?
I have appeared there roughly 10 to 15 off and on. It's there was a time when I was doing a lot more conventions that I would not be able to be there for a few years. There was a gap,
Sure.
but for the most part, yeah, it's I would say closer to 15. And
How-
it started out, it's so funny. You talk about celebrity, you talk about fame. That first season that I appeared at the Highway 18, I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I need some 8x10s. So I ordered about 1,000 8x10s of this ugly mug. It's hard to believe, but yes. So I sat there, and it was something that kind of got to me. It showed me that there needs to be a loyalty to the fans, because there were lines that were 100 people waiting to get this 8x10 of me, not knowing who I am, thinking, oh, he's got an 8x10, he must be somebody. And they were free at that. I gave them free at that time, but they were
Sure.
100 deep, just standing in the heat, waiting to get that picture from me. And that kind of said, as a entertainer, as a performer, yes, I have an obligation to these people, and I have maintained that all these years. Fans are
Uh,
very important to me.
Yes, and I just look at it like this: how like you said, every season you see the new faces, you see the same faces come in, and maybe this year when they come in, now they got their 7 or 8 year old with them,
Mhm.
and they get to see you, and they get to see how you interact, and they go like, "That's really cool," I've never seen that before, and that leads them to explore other movies, or other horror hosts. I mean, it's a great thing to do.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
because
So
it's part
many.
a TV host. I mean, horror hosts, they're a part of Americana. They're part of. I mean, when you talk about horror movies, and the different genres, the different styles, the different whatever, you have to include the horror host, because for a lot of us, they were our introduction to the horror movie. Sitting
They
down or even other dramas.
oh,
I watched
they
a gentleman who did I mentioned to you, he did a Tom Hatton. He wasn't a dressed up horror host, but he did the creature feature show. But the one show that he did, because he was a huge fan and he was an expert, but he used to run a 2 hour Popeye show, and he
oh,
was showing Popeye. And I can't tell you how many adults would look forward to that show. Adults and the kids, and they think, you got to watch this, you got to watch this, and then a whole new generation of people saw that, and got into cartoons, got into animation, got into animation leads to novels, to comic books. It's a gateway.
oh,
I think horror
yes,
hosts are gateways.
absolutely true. That is so true. In fact, they just made a documentary in Kenosha, Wisconsin, about the horror hosts down there. And a good friend of mine, oh, Dr. Destruction. He's been on the air forever also, and he started out on the community access TVs, and he's still on that, and he also does some other stuff. He does like a live, like a pumpkin farm. He's got a haunted section of a Jerry Smith pumpkin farm that he does during the Halloween. But he was in this documentary, and they showed me that I was actually in the documentary too, which was a total shock to me, that I learned about it like the day before it was being premiered.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
so
there's
cool.
more and more of those types of things that are getting out there.
Do you think social media, do you think platforms like this, here we are, we're talking, like we're talking like I mean, this show here could easily be uh, this could easily be on a local community station. Back in the day, you could,
Oh,
you
sure.
know, you, you know. But do you think platforms like YouTube, platforms like where there's you could or Vimeo or what have you, or Rumble, where you could do a show like this? I mean, is it feasible that a horror host could do a show based on YouTube and keep it going?
Oh,
And or
absolutely. Absolutely, they could. And, I think back even just 10 years. I think back of some of the early horror conventions that I appeared at myself, and probably another dozen or so, or 20 hosts that are throughout the country that have started out even pre internet, doing their shows on community television, community access shows. And then the dominant thing that I would see were that the new people coming in and wanting to try, oh, I would like to be a horror host too. And the internet has facilitated that to an extent. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's something that has to be a labor of love for you. Unless you're the Svenning guy on Me TV, it has to be a labor of love, or the Elvira. If you want to be Elvira, that's those are the ones that they preceded some of us. They were between that group that was in the 60s and 70s and the first run of horror hosts that started appearing at the conventions. And
yeah,
and those two are primarily, they're the ones that are making the money. If you're in it to go, oh man, I'm gonna break into this, I'm gonna make the money someday, that is the wrong attitude to have.
yeah,
Get into it.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
you have to go into it because you enjoy doing it. I mean, that's why people get into the drive-in theater business. That's why they get into being a horror host, whether it's doing live events like I do mostly now, or it's somebody that's on this monstration channel that they have on the internets. I think what's his name, the vice president guy that he invented this internet thing and thought of, oh, I'm gonna have Al Gore's
Yeah,
Gore right there, horror host. What a perfect name for a horror host.
yeah, Al Gore. Yeah, that's for sure.
So
That's
he
right. That's
invented
right.
it
He invented the internet.
with the idea of having horror hosts on it.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it really is a labor of love now, because you go into with that with your eyes wide open, as like, if you look, like, you mentioned Elvira, and it's sort of funny. It's like I'm actually sitting here thinking, I'm going like, you know, there was a lot of male horror hosts, and a lot of them. But
Yeah,
there just that weren't that many women that did this. And I always wondered why, because Elvira came on there and just absolutely ruled. But there was never another female horror host that even came close to what she
right,
accomplished.
right.
Now,
And they've come out a little more now, but you have to remember those people that were doing horror hosting in the 60s and 70s, that was not their job at that particular TV station. They were everything from booth announcers to salespeople for the television station to anchors. Again, my horror host of record, Cadaverino, he did Nightmare Theater, but he also had the world's only uh, weather puppet. He had a puppet named Albert the Alley Cat. And Albert would appear alongside the weather person on the news. So here you are, this perfectly normal looking person giving you the weather report, being assisted by a cat hand puppet. It
Oh,
was
that's
the
cool.
only one in the United States. In fact, there was a very famous meteorologist who is just retiring, and he worked at a station in Milwaukee, and he was doing the weather with Albert the alley cat. But the Meteorology Society, they were so snooty, they would not let him put his certificate on the screen as long as he was doing the weather with a hand puppet. So Tom Skilling is his name. He went on to have a long career on WGN in Chicago without the hand puppet. I have to admit he looked better with the cat, but he's just retiring after probably 30 or 40 years down in Chicago, doing it all by himself. Who does weather all by themselves?
Yeah,
But
I would love to have seen that. That would have been, that's yeah, that's too bad because that's a
the bits
really
and
cool
pieces
way.
on the internet. In fact, one of the things we did, uh, the Dr. Cadaverino was portrayed. He was a booth announcer named Jack Dublon, and I got in touch with his daughter a little over a year ago. He's since passed away. He's in that horror hosting graveyard in the sky. But his daughter was so flattered that we wanted to have mini figurines made up of Cadaverino and of Albert the Alley Cat. And the Milwaukee market in all that time has never forgot those two. And I get calls for them. People see me at an event and they want to buy those figurines from me. But
Oh,
yeah, that's TV is not like that anymore. I think it kind of takes itself a little too seriously.
uh, now when you were hosting, did you have your own hand puppet? I mean, well, let's go back a little bit further. That how did you decide that this is something you wanted to do? How old were you, or what year were you wanted to become a horror host? I mean,
Well,
you influenced by
I was
Dr.
older. I was well into, oh man, into my 30s, into my 40s, even just into my early 40s.
Wow.
And I had done television in Milwaukee, and never as a horror host, but just giving out different tips on crime and that kind of thing. But when I did the horror host thing, I thought, well, yeah, that would be, it would be a fun, interesting thing to do. I lived in the shadows of the television station, their tower. When
Oh,
I was a kid, I grew up thinking that all these people that appeared on the television screen, they all lived and hung out right near that TV tower. So I remember having mom and dad driving me over there looking for the Earl Gillespie who did the sports, and looking for the Weird Allen who did the weather, and all these different people, Cadaverino and Albert the Alley Cat, trying to find them at where that TV tower was. And you know how that is. Nobody there. It's just the transmitter.
right, right. Yeah, you thought they were all hang out there. That's
Yeah,
funny. That's yeah. You know what?
where
That's
they all had to be. And it was maybe 10 blocks from my house. So it was a short trip, and I could go over there. If I didn't see them the first time, maybe I would see them another time.
right,
And they
right.
go, "Oh, you're that kid that's looking for us." But no, they fooled me, never showed up. But I think of that Albert the Alley Cat puppet, and I had one as a kid because you could obtain them. They were made here in Wisconsin. But I moved into ventriloquism, and my dad, uh, I had a ventriloquist dummy. There was a fellow named Jerry Mahoney. And some of your watchers here, they'll remember Jerry Mahoney. Well, I got my first one when I was 4 years old. And I still have that original Jerry Mahoney to this day. And I have pictures sitting on my mom's lap, me and Jerry Mahoney, and that are the sweetest looking things on the planet. But my dad decided he would always get into something different. It was everything from, oh, he wanted a travel trailer. So suddenly we were big time campers as I was growing up. Suddenly he thought, I'll learn to play the banjo. Well, he was terrible. Dad was just, he tried, and God rest him, but man, he could not play the banjo to save his life. Then he decided, I'll be a ventriloquist. So he went out and got a very, very pricey professional dummy. And I don't mind calling them dummies. Some people are offended by that, but unless I make them talk, they don't talk on their own. So he got this professional one, and it sat on the bed at home for years and years and years, because just a great banjo player he was just that good at ventriloquism too.
Isn't that
And,
something?
oh man, it was scary. So when I started horror hosting, I adopted. At that time, his name was Johnny, and I adopted him and changed his name to Professor Varnus Lupescu. And he went from a ventriloquist dummy with freckles and short hair and bib overhauls and stuff into a tuxedoed, kind of odd and crazy guy with dark lines around his eyes. He's had a couple different looks over the years, but he started out, I didn't know anything about doing ventriloquism.
Huh.
So he would join me at conventions or on the TV show, and he would sit there and do nothing. And I book myself as the world's worst ventriloquist and the world's only silent ventriloquist dummy. And I did that for years.
Why did you do that? Did you do that a part of the gimmick, or did you do that because you were still learning the craft?
No, I did it as part of the gimmick. At that time, I had no interest in learning how to do it.
Okay.
Until I went down to the Ventriloquist Museum down in Kentucky and talked to the people down there. They were, and I don't want to say they didn't shame me into doing it, but they influenced me to, yes, you might as well do this properly.
Wow.
And I'm one of these people that you cannot really teach how to do something. Dad took the ventriloquist correspondence course with little cassette tapes and little booklets he'd have to fill out and send them off to the teacher to get graded. Well, I have to be able to naturally do things. And I was able to naturally do ventriloquism. And so, it's got to be, 7-8 years ago, I want to say, I finally broke him out of his silent mode and have done ventriloquism just live and in person, just because I wanted to. Then
I think that's an incredible art. It's an incredible skill. We had a ventriloquist comedian, April Brooker, on the show,
okay,
and she brought some of her characters out, and I'm looking at her just like I'm looking at you, this close, and what she did, I could barely discern, and it was only because it was so close. I could barely discern her lips. Her lips are moving. It was
yep.
amazing. She just sit there, and it's like she'd do the voices, and she barely moved. It was amazing. It's an amazing gift.
Well,
I'm,
my
I'm
lips were not moving for a minute. I was making you talk. Did you see that?
That's right.
That's how I can do it over the air. Watch.
Hi, how are you? I am Dr. Ivan Cryptosis.
it is a blessing to be able to do that. And Professor Lupescu is such a draw at different events. Simply, even if he's just kind of sitting there and kicking back, he goes to conventions to get engaged. He is always looking for a wife. So I help him out. I have bat rings that I hand out to people. It draws them to the table to see what's going on, and I hand them a ring. I explain to them, "Oh, you're now engaged to Professor Lupescu, and the expectation is that you are now going out and you are planning this big wedding." If I get somebody there, they're with a fellow, I say, "What? Who is this?" And they go, "Oh, that's my dad." Well, I explain to dad the necessity to come up with a big dowry for Lupescu. He already has a job. He has a career working with me. So, it all kind of works out well for everybody.
Ah,
And
that is
yet,
so cool.
over the
Now, now,
years, oh, go
now,
ahead. I'm
now,
sorry. The big mouth.
now, your first one was Puss Corsus. Probably killing that name. So that was your first sidekick. Let me. Dale mentioned here. He says that he grew up with Rhonda Shear, USA Up All Night as the horror host he saw the most. Yeah, I used to watch Rhonda Shear as well.
That was before she went to sell underwear on TV.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I mean, she was really glamorous, though. I mean, she never dressed up in a costume. I mean, she would just pop up, and she was, she wasn't. I don't think she was a traditional horror host. She was definitely a host, but I don't know. I don't know if she would qualify because she didn't make herself up. I mean,
So there was
Elvira did.
her. There was Gilbert Gottfried did it
Yeah,
for a while,
yeah.
and
He used to do Saturday nights.
I cast a very wide net when it comes to horror host. In fact, recently I was kind of called on the carpet on Facebook about being a horror host, and it's like they I don't know if they were offended or what their problem was, but they were kind of, "You can't be a horror host. You don't have a television program."
See, that's
So,
bullshit. I mean, and I'll address that straight to the guy who said it. That's bullshit.
oh
Okay,
yeah,
it absolutely you can be a horror host. You absolutely can do that. Why not? Anybody can be a
sure.
horror host. I mean,
One of
they can.
my buddy Doctor Destruction out of Kenosha, he's trying to explain to me that I may have left my certification elapse, and he would like me to send him a check for $1,200 to get reinstated properly. Oh, I sure.
Well, maybe, you know what? That's probably where my suspended fanboy card is too. Probably with Doctor Destruction as well. I've always wondered what happens when I get told that, dude, you lost your fanboy card. I always wonder where they do with my fanboy card. Now I think I know. They send it to Doctor Destruction. But
That's right.
but that that really burns my ass though when someone comes up there and says that, like, you can't be a horror host because you don't have a TV show. For what? You know what? You know what? It takes a lot more to be a horror host than just in front of the camera. I mean, if you're going to conventions, and if you, I mean, horror hosts are, like I said, they're like gatekeepers to me.
Mhm.
They're gatekeepers. They're the introductory, for many people into horror, into science fiction, into fantasy, because they're there. Sure, they might not show the best movies per se, but for the most part, a lot of those same horror hosts, they know the movies that they're showing, and they know the history of those movies, and they'll tell you, you could start here and just go that way. Like, here, start with this person here. Start with Boris Karloff here, and then follow the road.
Sure.
And go and discover places like the Twilight Zone. Go discover places like the Forbidden Planet. That's what horror hosts do. Even today, they're still here
Pointing.
introducing movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that rather. Yeah, I find is that in our group, in Facebook group? Is that what that person that said that to you? Is that in our Facebook
It was
group?
in one of the groups. I don't know if they was in the horror host one or where it was now. The
Oh,
person will be remaining slimeless because and I am very proud of the fact that so many of my fellow horror hosts took the position that you have and have come up and said, yeah, that person just is totally out of line and they don't know what they're talking about. They're full of hooey. And but Doctor Destruction, yeah, I'm sure. Oh man, I'll bet you that $1,200 check got lost in the mail to him. With the holidays and everything. Yeah, that's. I'll have to explain it to him when I talk to him soon.
it's funny. It's like to me, it's like I've actually talked to a few podcasters who have come up with names. Like their own names. Like I had one of my first podcasters I ever met was a guy who called himself Doctor Evil.
Oh,
And he was just a podcaster. I mean, he didn't go on camera or anything, but he used to talk about evil, and different guests would come onto the show and they would talk about the nature of evil. And no, he wasn't on TV, and no, I didn't know what he looked like. But by God, if he wasn't a horror host, the way he had he had a defined character. He knew what he was talking about. I mean, it was fascinating to listen to.
there's a
Um,
lot of different horror that's out there.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, that burns my ass. So what was your first public appearance as Dr. Cryptosis? Where did you
It would have been at
how did
that
you, how did you come up with your costume and your name of Cryptosis?
they would have been at that museum in Madison. That would might have been my first appearance. The costume has changed, and I got very smart early on, and I'll tell you exactly why. I look at many of my fellow horror hosts, and for one appearance, and there's a picture of me floating around on the internets with me in bib overhauls, and I've got like green grease paint makeup all over my face and some black stuff smeared in and so forth. And after that first time, that was enough to explain to me what a pain this is to put this on and take this off all the time. So I made it very simple on myself. I went with Ray-Ban sunglasses, and these are the original sunglasses from 18 plus years ago, to a black wig, a derby hat. I even early on I used to wear fangs, and the fangs left me, uh, quite a few years ago, and that they left because I was appearing at a convention, and I wore the fangs all weekend. They were the cap type,
Okay.
and sugary substances got behind those, and I ended up with a cavity right in one of my front incisor pointy tooth thing, right on the gum line. And I said, "Oh, those are done. Those are fired. No more pointy teeth." Very few people actually even recognize that I'm not wearing those anymore. Um, every once in a while I might get called on it.
I,
Where are
I
your
I know I do know where those went to. I know where your fangs went to. The gentleman who just walked into the room, Al Lucard, aka
uh,
the Bat. He knows
uh,
all about it. He says, "I know
uh,
all about fangs," and he's
uh,
right.
yeah,
The-
they got fired. So I cut it down from a lot of makeup and stuff to the hair, the derby hat, and the Ray-Bans. And I can be in and out of this faster than you shake a stick. And well, the white gloves also are part of the outfit, but made life much simpler. And it's it. I go, yeah, I guess I'm the laziest man in show business.
I'm just thinking of my buddy Al. I'm going like Al would probably be he would actually be a really good horror host. That well, him and I did a show together, and we're known as the Cat and the Bat. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's
So he got rid of the fangs, and then the name, Cryptus, uh,
Cryptos.
yes.
Cryptos.
How did that?
Say it
I was
right. Fire you. Cryptosis. Cryptosis.
Cryptosis. How do we come up with that?
Close enough. I grabbed that name right out of the air. I
Nice.
and it's like, oh, cryptos. And you know what? You know what cryptosis is? It is
No.
a nail fungus. It is the name of a nail fungus. So I, I realized
Is that really? Is that really what it is? It's a nail fungus?
really, and Ivan was just a good name to go along with it. The
Sure.
Professor Lupescu, another name. You know,
Um,
that all the things that have occurred over time were just crazy things that I kind of thought of and thought would be, well, that'd be a good idea. You know, you even bring it into the present day. And I've got a new item. And oh, man, let me reach one here. Can we see this? Oh, yes. Do you see
oh,
that?
yes. Yep.
Autograph. You know what that is?
It is a paperweight.
Oh, no. It can be used as a paperweight, my friend. This is the Dr. Ivan Cryptosis Celebrity Autographed Urinal Cake. This is a genuine urinal cake. It has never lied into a urinal per se, but I decided let's have something different. You know, anybody can do pictures, and I do pictures. You can do t-shirts. I've done those over the years. You can have whatever mini figurines. But I said to myself, what's kind of catchy?
Right, right.
Urinal cakes.
Urinal cakes.
On the other side, my logo, yes, in this fine, genuine plastic case. So, you know, I've had these at the last few events that I've done, some of the Comic Cons and toy shows. And the thing I like about them, I do not sell anything at my table. But the minute they see those, they go, what is that? And I explained to them, these are the Cryptosis Celebrity Urinal Cakes. It has brought a smile to the face of every person that has seen those. And I
Now you say you don't sell them. If you don't mind me asking, why not? If people want to pay for it, why not sell them?
here's the hitch. I have a quiz show, and I've done my quiz show out on the road for a number of years. I do stand up as this character. I do the ventriloquism as the character. I do my quiz show, and it is Dr. C's Quagmire Quiz, Dead or Undead. When I'm at an event like a Comic Con and I'm at a table, I will do my table version of that quiz show. And the way it works is that I have pictures, I have 8x10s, I've got 4x6s, I have my gloves that are available, I have the urinal cakes, and you decide, oh, I would really, really like a urinal cake. And what I'll do is that the urinal cake is $20. But we are going to do the Quagmire quiz. It's usually a person, I will ask a question like, is this person alive or dead? So you got 50-50 chance. What did this person die from? And I will give you 3 things that the person could have died from, be it, you know, heart attack, cancer, or a zombie attack. Zombie attack always one of the options. And I do have to let people know it wasn't a zombie attack. So,
But there are the thing about it though, there are a lot of actors who we know who we know that have died by zombies in the movies.
In the movie,
That actually should count as the answer.
but it doesn't count in this. But if the person gets the question right, I give them the item, be it the urinal cake, be it the 8x10, or the gloves, whatever they decided up front that they wanted to play for, they get that item for free. If they give the wrong answer, they've now obligated themselves to Cryptosis and they pay for the item. That's how the quiz show works. So they have a 50-50 chance of walking away from my table, getting one of my Cryptosis merchandise items for free.
Wow. What a great that's awesome. That is
It's a fun
awesome.
way to do it, and people like to gamble. They want to take a chance, and if they think
Sure.
they have an opportunity to get it for free, they do. And I give away plenty of pictures, plenty. I have not given away a lot of urinal cakes, but people have played for them and lost for the most part. I'm always happy because that's the bigger ticket item.
Right. You definitely, that's one thing I get to come across crystal clear is you absolutely love what you're doing.
Oh,
What do you like about conventions? Have you had some good conventions? Have you had some not so good conventions? Tell us a little bit about your experience appearing in public.
well, I love the public appearances, and I've done events for great promoters. I've done events for not so great promoters where I've just simply had to, walk away because they've changed the terms of it or what have
Uh,
you.
that's the
But
worst, isn't it?
the most part, and I do more pop culture, I do more uh, comic conventions and more of the toy show conventions than I even do horror conventions anymore. Back in the day, I did a lot of them, everything from the Crypticon events to the Horror Hound and so forth, and did a lot of things like that. I, I find from my perspective, doing the events that have a little wider audience works well for me, and
Right.
kind of get one-on-one with somebody standing across that table. It all goes back to those days of giving the pictures out and really being in awe and respecting those fans that have come over to see me, and that means a lot to me.
So what has been your favorite convention that you worked? And generally, how does it work? Do they? I mean, you get invited by the promoter, right? I mean, they see you as talent, so they call
Exactly.
you up. Oh, okay.
On They'll see me on Facebook. I was off of Facebook for a number of years, simply because I didn't want the hassle of it. I got back on it this past summer to promote the events at the Highway 18 Theater. And as such, all of a sudden, these promoters are going, hey, Cryptosis, we thought you were dead. You're not, are you? No, I'm
You
not
should have said, but I
alive.
am, Daddy. I'm dead and loving it.
I'm dead. But, and then the invitation would come out. Would you like to appear at, one of the QuadCon events or what have you, whichever one it was. One of my favorite ones, I would say, would have been the Crypticon convention up in Minneapolis. That was a very family friendly event, a lot of different horror stars. And that was my favorite one because everybody knew everybody there. It wasn't a huge convention, but I loved doing that one. They have
Uh,
a different
do,
order now.
do you do just family friendly conventions? I mean, is that your? I mean, will you do
Well,
any convention, or will do you try to stick to the family ones?
I'll tell you, I years ago I decided that I wanted my character to be family friendly. That you would not be afraid to send your son, your daughter, your grandson, granddaughter up to see me. And I have maintained that. I've since doing the TV show in Madison where I worked with the Shaning Bradley, I have the only person I have appeared with, I should say two people. I've appeared with Lou Pescu, which he isn't living, breathing. But I do appear with my oldest grandson, Carson, and he is Cryptosis Jr., and he dresses similar to me. So if it's something like that, if I can bring my grandsons into doing something like that, that means a lot to me.
Yes,
I
I can see that.
also have appeared in uh, as a host for the horror films of Christopher R. Mim. He makes horror films like the old 1950s, 1960s style of horror. Very campy, bad, horrible, awful special effects. Um, and I appeared in his films for years as Cryptosis. And his films, he brought his kids into them. The worst part about his film, actually the worst and best part, they're all in black and white.
Um, let me ask you this, because now that you've seen, a lot of the horror hosts, they show a lot of public domain movies. A lot of them are just really, really bad. Do you think today's movies, horror movies? I mean, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of horror movies of today's world. Do you think today's horror films are worse than the old ones in the 50s? Do you
I
think they're
don't
they're worse in how they're made or how they look? Because you heard Ed Wood being described as the worst director ever, and
I,
me and a lot of the people in our chat here, we could tell you that Ed Wood may be a lot of things, but was he the worst film director ever? No, no, not by a long shot.
no.
We
Yeah,
know a lot. We know a lot of directors. A lot of horror movies are just worse than they were in the 50s and the 40s, the 50s, and even the 60s. And you would think that today's world that the movies would be a lot better with all the tech and everything else, the special makeup and all that. But there are so many bad movies, and I go back and I look at the old black and white ones with what they had.
no,
They're
sure.
not half bad. When I grew up, I watched them and go like, "Oh, that's some bullshit," and
Right.
laugh. But now I look at them and go like, that ain't half bad.
No,
That
no.
for what they
You know,
had.
in the days when I was doing a lot of horror conventions, whether it was in Indianapolis or where California, wherever, Kansas City, St. Louis, I was all over doing these conventions, and I would run into budding filmmakers there who would hand me a DVD, and they would, and it would be pre-production DVD. Would you mind taking a look at this?
Oh,
Uh, and let me know, would you do a blurb for my DVD jacket? Or, can you let me know what you think about the movie in general and maybe say something out on the facing book or, anything like that. And it would routinely be, and I've sworn off taking DVDs from people now because I don't need to see any more scantily clad young ladies running through a farmer's field being chased by a guy with a machete or a chainsaw. And that was the thing that kind of, I thought about those movies, and they're all being influenced off of Jason, or they're being influenced off of Freddy, or what have you. And you know, I I don't like to say I don't ever want to watch another movie like that, but I don't know offhandly if I need to see another one like that.
do you think today's horror is? Do you think today's horror films, as we know it, do you think it's lost its innocence from the 50s and the 60s? I mean, you see some wild science fiction movies, a lot of creature features, and you go back there, and it's really surprising it's really surprising. It's like how serious a lot of those actors took those movies. I mean, they were acting. They were like they weren't like winking at the camera. They weren't trying to slide in humorous lines. I mean, they were trying to project a real story. Um, do you think that art is gone in today's horror movies? For the sake of just being gory?
I think that has entered it into it a little too much. They've lost a lot that way. Um, I think of the not the last horror film I've seen, but one that I really, really liked. And it had gore in it, but it had a lot of humor in it. And it was called The Dead Don't Die with Bill Murray. And it was a
Okay,
zombie film. It came out, what, 5 or 6 years ago?
yeah,
And
about 5 years
I
ago.
I like the Zombieland movies.
Look,
You know,
yeah,
it, it,
horror comedy. I mean, comedy, horror comedy. I mean, yeah, when it's done right, it can be very effective.
I
Um,
think in some cases, some of these folks have taken themselves way too seriously when they're
mhm,
making these movies. You're making something of fiction. You're making something with just a goofy looking character in it, or, you know, no matter what the premise is, lighten up a little bit. There's way too much live horror that's going on now that
yes.
let's do a little escapism. Let's have a good time.
Yeah,
With
I'm with you. I do. I know a lot of people take their movies really seriously. There a lot of them. You're right. I mean, a lot of the horror movies today. I mean, it's okay to. I mean, without like I said, without addressing the fourth wall, and without winking at it. Um, I mean, but there's room for some comedy and some light comedy and horror. There's room for that.
Brooke showed us with Young Frankenstein. That there was plenty of room for that.
Oh, we talked about a movie yesterday I talked to on a friend's channel, our friend Video Tasties. We watched Van Helsing yesterday, and we talked about that. We deep dived it and watched it, and we liked that movie a lot, even though it didn't have we were sitting there, we were talking about it, and we're going like, this is a really fun movie. It's just that like the guy who directed Van Helsing, he directed the first two Mummy movies, and
Mm-hmm.
those two movies had a lot of fun. There are a lot of comedy in those, but at the same time, it didn't sacrifice scares or thrills. It didn't
No,
sacrifice that, but yet there was still a lot of comedy in it. And we're talking about yesterday about how Van Helsing, by the same guy, it didn't have that same comedy element to it. It had a comic relief figure, but he didn't get a chance to do a whole lot, you
no,
know. And I feel like going forward, it would be sort of nice to see just a slight uptake, in some of these movies, to have a little bit of humor if it fits. Of course, it's
no.
got to fit. It's got to fit.
The horror films themselves, yeah, you can fit it in there. All the funny stuff does not have to appear on an animated feature. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can still have live people. You can still have those live people injecting some humor into the film, and
True.
I think it does take that a lot of times.
I agree. I agree. I think there's room for dark comedy in some horror films. Uh, um, Doctor, what is going on with the Doctor for 2024? What do you got planned to scare up in 2024? Do you have any big plans coming
Well,
up?
2024, it's going to be, I'll be on the comic and toy convention circuit a little bit, certainly through into January and into February. Probably some in March I'll be appearing at. As we get a little closer, I'll be, releasing different dates there. I know the one in January is a comic and toy convention at a shopping mall. And it's
No.
really funny. They are playing host. Shopping malls throughout the country are playing host to whether it's pop culture or horror or science fiction. They are doing a lot of conventions there now.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I'll be at Brookfield Square in Brookfield, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. I will be there the 20th and 21st of January. I have another one coming up in West Allis, Wisconsin in February. I don't have the dates in the rolling around in my head somewhere, I'm sure, but I will be putting that on the facing thing too. But and into March there will be more dates coming up. April I will be returning to the Highway 18,
Yeah.
and I'll be in. Unlike last year, I will be interspersing more conventions and events than I did previously. But mostly it will be at the Highway 18. The Highway 18 is actually one of those drive-ins that's for sale. Uh,
Oh,
he will be opening it up this year if he does not have a buyer. So I want all your viewers and the beautification people online to kind of reach in their pocket. If they have a spare $900,000 cash in that pocket and they want to be a theater owner, I can set them up. I know the
uh,
people.
I mean, it's only 900 grand, right?
That's right. That's right.
Oh, man,
Check, check, check.
I hope he has a great summer. I hope you have a great summer. I hope you have a great convention as well.
I do.
I mean, keep the driving alive. I hope they stay. I hope they stay around. I really think that it's again it's like we have such short memories, right? Like we when the pandemic hit and we needed to get out and do things, we went to the drive-in, and drive-ins thrived. And then once the theaters went open, all of a sudden people seem to forget. And it's like, why are you forgetting how much fun you had at the drive-in? Why aren't you going back? I mean, it was good enough for you when there was nothing here. So why isn't it good enough now? And yeah, it sort of frustrates me when I see that. Like
A couple of weeks
it
ago,
helped keep Hollywood alive. It helped keep Hollywood alive. Like you would think some of the studios would at least freaking cut them a break a little bit. Maybe not take so much money at the gate. For a couple of years.
yeah.
Um,
Went to a couple of weeks ago. I went to an indoor theater, and I would have loved to see this movie at the outdoor. They were doing a special screening of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I loved that movie. And all the time I was sitting in that enclosed theater, I'm thinking, how cool would that be to be sitting out on some nice lawn chairs watching that at the Highway 18 or any outdoor theater around the country.
yeah.
They were celebrating, I don't know what it was, like the 36th anniversary or something goofy. You know,
Uh,
you know,
uh,
doing well.
here's my last question for you, doctor,
All
before
right.
we get out of here. So tell me tell me right now as far as the horror goes. You mentioned a couple of the horror movies you like, but who are some of your favorite performers today? Some of your favorite actors that you enjoy watching on
You
the big screen.
From a horror standpoint,
Yes.
I really there is really nobody that catches my attention. Most of them are just pretty straightforward. I saw the Demeter movie, uh, but there was really nobody star power wise in that movie. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit, and I would see it again. In fact, that was one of the movies I even paid to keep forever on my streaming thing. But
Okay.
star wise, yeah, there's nobody out. They're all dead. It's hard to find a new Bela Lugosi movie. It's just not happening. I know Karloff is not making a new movie, but
Yeah.
the new people, they sadly they just kind of they fall into the background. And
Yeah.
people go see them, guys that played
And
Jason, and I know first Jason, Ari Lyman. I've known him for years, and he has made a career out of being the first Jason, and I give him so much credit for that.
sure.
He's appearing everywhere with his band. I've introduced his band numerous times at different conventions. But if I had to be a dropper of the names, yeah, Harry would get my attention. But beyond that, they kind of they kind of fade into the background for me.
Mm, right, right. I can see that. I can see that.
Trouble enough to
Uh,
remember my own name.
I don't think we'll forgive me forgetting that. I definitely hope that you'll come back and come hang out with us next year. I definitely love to have you come back
Oh,
if you like to.
yes, I had a great time with you tonight.
Oh, me
Uh,
too.
you had more than 8 questions, but I'm not going to charge you extra for the
Yeah,
surplus.
thank you so much. Because I'm dead broke. Me and my buddy Mighty Casey, we just checked our wallets to see if we had a spare 900,000, and I think we came up with a bottle cap and 12 cents.
Uh,
That's all we
wouldn't
came up with.
I don't think he'd give up the theater for that. The owner is 75 years old, and he's run it for 25 years. And this past season, he's just decided it's
Yeah.
time to at least get it on the market.
I hope that he's able to sell it. I would like to see him be able to sell it. I don't want to see it closed. I hope it happens. I hope someone will invest in it and take it and run with it. Like I said, we need more drive-in theaters.
Yeah,
If
I
we
think
had one, if we had one around my house, I mean, we don't have anything near me at all. And if we did, I would be sorely tempted. I know more so. I would be, I would go out there and watch it because I enjoyed watching it on watching it. Now the sound is a lot better. It comes through your radio. It's a lot more clear. The pictures are better. I mean, it's just a really fun time
a lot
to
of them
go.
give you the option of listening to it through that cast aluminum speaker. They give
Yeah,
you the chance to listen to it that way, or through your radio. But people,
through your
there are
radio.
people who take advantage of that, and still they want that total flavor of the old style drive-in, and they go with that.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to thank our chat for coming in and hanging out with us. I see Casey here, Mighty Al Licard, aka the Bat. Thank you, Sue, for coming in from the Bud Files. Mr. Bones, always with the wrench, always with the support. Thank you so much. Andre down in New Zealand. That's right. We have someone from New Zealand watch and listen to you tonight, Doctor.
Oh,
So yes, we have an international audience. Uh, we had, like I said, we have Mighty Casey. He's the king of all kaiju. He came out. So thank you guys all so much. And tomorrow night we will be back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock with filmmaker Matt Patterson. Will be here. Matt Patterson and I have known each other for years, and we will be talking about Lunamancer, his new movie Lunamancer, and we will be talking a lot of Warner Brother archives. Uh, yeah, he gave my blog a really big boost up and supported me with let me review movies from the archive. And so I'm glad to have him come on and meet him face to face. Thursday on the 21st, we have Nas Red will be here. Film director Nas Red will be here with us. He has done a fantastic he's done actually he did a great documentary about his making of his movie Debbie and the Devil. He has made a tremendous documentary called Hellacious, in which explains to him all the trials and tribulations he had to go through in order to make his movie. And he will be here with his producing partner April, Thursday, the 21st at 8 o'clock. Yeah, it's going to be a good week. I hope you guys all will come out and support it. And I'm not sure if there's a boneyard tonight. I'm going to take that it is. It'll probably be on between 10 o'clock and 10:30 with Mr. Bones and whoever gets on the panel. But thank you again for coming out and supporting us tonight, and we will see you tomorrow. Doc, stay right where you're at, and everybody else. I'm going to say goodnight to you right here, right now, and we will see you tomorrow night with Matt Patterson. Peace.